Patrol, did you see that?
What happens when you cross a line that isn't on any map? When the vast, silent landscape between nations becomes a stage for events that defy explanation, and the things that cross over are not documented, not legal, not even human. The borderlands are a place of shadows, where the rules of reality seem to fray at the edges, and the stories born there are whispered, not shouted. This is Verified Nightmare, where every story is documented, every claim is scrutinized, and every nightmare is verified. Tonight, we journey into the heart of this ancient, contested ground. We are not dealing with urban legends or campfire tales. We are examining 11 specific cases, each rooted in Texas soil, each corroborated by eyewitness testimony, official law enforcement reports, or declassified documents. These are accounts of ranchers, truckers, law enforcement officers, and ordinary people who found themselves facing the extraordinary in the lonely stretches between towns. What they encountered out there in the dark has left permanent scars, not just on the land, but on the official record. These are the 11 most scary true Texas borderland horror stories. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you the most thoroughly investigated cases of the strange and terrifying, and your subscription ensures you won't miss a single verified account. What you are about to hear may change how you perceive the empty spaces on the map, and the things that might be waiting within them. Our first story begins not with a bang, but with a routine patrol. A Texas county sheriff, a man of unwavering pragmatism, is about to have his understanding of his jurisdiction shattered forever. This is the account of Deputy Elias Marsh, and the night he pulled over a convoy that wasn't supposed to be there.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The Silver City convoy. Elias Marsh was a 34-year-old deputy sheriff for Terrell County, a man who knew every crack and every mile of asphalt on his stretch of Highway 90. A former Army mechanic, he approached his job with the systems check mentality: identify the problem, apply the correct procedure, document the result. His life was one of quiet, predictable rhythm, defined by the smell of diesel, desert sage, and coffee kept hot in a thermos on his passenger seat. The vast, star-choked emptiness of the West Texas night was not a thing of fear for him, but a familiar canvas. That changed on the cool, clear night of October 17, 2019, at approximately 2:14 a.m. According to the official patrol log filed that night, Deputy Marsh was conducting a routine speed enforcement detail near the unincorporated marker of Sanderson. His radar registered a cluster of vehicles approaching from the west at a consistent 57 miles per hour in a 75 zone, slow enough to be suspicious. As they came into view under his high beams, he noted 3 identical, boxy vans. They were a dull, non-reflective silver, like brushed aluminum, with no visible manufacturer badges, license plates, or windows except for the front windshield and driver's side window. The vehicles moved in perfect unison, maintaining a precise 10-car length interval. They emitted a low, almost subaudible hum, a sound Deputy Marsh would later describe in his statement as a high-voltage power line, or the inside of a server room. Procedure dictated a traffic stop for the suspicious absence of plates. Marsh activated his light bar. The lead van's brake lights did not illuminate. Instead, all 3 vehicles slowed simultaneously and smoothly, as if on a single command, pulling onto the gravel shoulder. The hum ceased, leaving a vacuum of silence so profound Marsh could hear the cooling ticks of his own engine. He called in the stop to dispatch, noting the 3 commercial-style vans, no tags, model unknown, and stepped out into the brittle air. Approaching the driver of the lead vehicle, Marsh's flashlight beam revealed a windshield so deeply tinted it appeared black. The driver's window rolled down silently. Inside, the cab was lit by the soft, green glow of instrument panels, casting light on a man in a crisp, gray uniform devoid of any patches, rank, or insignia. His features were unremarkable, but his posture was rigidly upright. Marsh's request for license and registration was met with a flat, polite response. "We are in transit. Our documentation is in order." The man produced a single sheet of smooth, plastic-like paper from a compartment. It bore a series of alphanumeric codes, a seal that resembled a stylized eagle, but with unfamiliar symbology, and the words clearance, apex, stamped across the top. No name, no vehicle identification number. The deputy's training kicked in. This was not a standard form. The subsequent radio exchange, recorded by County Dispatch, and later obtained through an open records request, details the growing unease. Marsh requested a warrant check on the codes. Dispatch, after a long pause, responded that the codes were not found in any state or federal database. Marsh then asked the driver about their destination and cargo. The driver's reply was identical each time, delivered with unnerving calm. "We are in transit. Our documentation is in order." Behind this driver, Marsh could see the silhouettes of two other figures in the passenger and middle seats, motionless, facing forward. It was then that Deputy Marsh noticed a detail that bypassed procedure and went straight to instinct. The interior of the van, beyond the front seats, was not a cargo hold. Through a slightly ajar interior bulkhead door, his flashlight caught the glint of stainless steel and glass cylinders, and within those cylinders, suspended in fluid, were shapes, organic, complex shapes that his mind refused to immediately process. A subsequent internal affairs report, while heavily redacted, cites Marsh's description of possible biological materials not consistent with standard medical transport. He took a step back, hand moving to his service weapon. "Sir, I need you and your passengers to step out of the vehicle." Now, the driver turned his head, meeting Marsh's eyes for the first time. His expression did not change. "That is not permissible. We are in transit. You are now interfering with the sovereign operation." At that moment, Marsh's radio erupted in a screech of digital noise. Dispatch's voice broke through, frantic. "Unit 3, we have a priority command from a federal liaison. You are ordered to disengage. Immediate cease and desist all inquiry. Acknowledge." Stunned, Marsh looked from the driver to his patrol car. The order was a breach of all protocol. As he hesitated, the interior lights of all three vans brightened. From the rear of each vehicle, a panel slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. Marsh braced for an armed exit. Nothing emerged. Instead, a wave of intense, metallic odor hit him: ozone, antiseptic, and something sweetly organic, like decaying flowers. The shapes in the cylinders seemed to shift, as if disturbed. Acting on a primal impulse he could never fully articulate in his debrief, Deputy Marsh retreated to his vehicle. He reported his compliance to dispatch, his voice strained on the recording. He watched as the van's windows opaqued completely, the hum returned, and they pulled back onto the highway with the same synchronized precision, accelerating smoothly until they were swallowed by the darkness to the east. The aftermath was a labyrinth of silence. The federal liaison was never identified. The county sheriff's attempt to follow up with Border Patrol, Homeland Security, and the FBI was met with formal acknowledgments, but zero substantive information. The official case file was classified at a county level, citing ongoing federal interest. The physical evidence was a single sheet of the strange plastic paper, which, when tested, revealed no fingerprints and was composed of polymers not listed in any domestic manufacturing database. It was catalogued as evidence and then, according to a chain of custody log, removed by external authority. Deputy Elias Marsh completed his shift. He filed his report, adhering strictly to the facts he could legally attest to. But the verification of his nightmare lies in the secondary details. The soil sample taken from the shoulder where the vans idled showed abnormally high levels of radiation, though at a non-hazardous level. The dash cam footage, reviewed by the sheriff and one county commissioner before being sealed, allegedly showed a brief, flickering distortion around the vehicles, like a heat mirage in the cold night. Marsh took a week of personal leave shortly after. He never again volunteered for the night shift on that stretch of highway. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is not from the encounter itself, but from a follow-up. A year later, a rancher 50 miles east, near Langtree, reported finding a strange, surgical-grade steel canister, empty and scorched as if by tremendous heat, washed up in a dry creek bed on his property. Etched into its side was a tiny, familiar seal, a stylized eagle, with the same unfamiliar symbology. The rancher's report was filed with the county, then quietly absorbed into the same closed file. The convoy and what it carried was in transit. To where and from where remains a question etched into the official record, with no answer provided.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The folk healer of El Arroyo de la Sangre. Dr. Anya Sharma was a 29-year-old epidemiologist with the State Health Department, a woman who trusted data, controlled studies, and the scientific method. She was deployed to the tiny, dusty colonia of El Arroyo de la Sangre in Starr County in the sweltering July of 2020, tasked with tracking an unusual cluster of antibiotic-resistant skin infections. The colonia, a sparse collection of homes clinging to the banks of a usually dry arroyo, was a place of deep tradition and quiet mistrust of outsiders. Enya's challenge was one of community outreach as much as medicine. Her normalcy was her laptop, her sterilized equipment, and a conviction that every illness had a logical, traceable source. Her initial surveys, documented in her weekly reports to the Austin office, noted the infections were severe but localized. The patients, all from 3 families living on the same dead-end lane, presented with lesions that were necrotic but mysteriously painless, and which failed to respond to first, second, and even third-line antibiotics. Cultured samples grew strange, slow-moving bacterial colonies unlike anything in the CDC database. The puzzle deepened when Anya, mapping the cases, discovered they began not with the eldest family members, but with the children, and seemed to spread backward, from child to parent. This reversed vector was epidemiologically bizarre. It was during a home visit with the Garza family that the inciting incident occurred. As Anya changed the dressing on young Mateo Garza's forearm lesion, his grandmother, Abuela Rosa, watched from a corner, her eyes dark pools of worry. She spoke little English, but as Anya packed her kit, the old woman approached and pressed a small, hand-stitched pouch of faded velvet into her hand. "Para usted," she whispered, gesturing to Enya's own hands, which had been meticulously gloved throughout the procedure. "La enfermedad no es natural, es un gusano del suelo." You must see the one who knows the dirt. Before Anya could ask for clarification, Abuela Rosa turned away. Later, translating the phrase literally, Anya dismissed it as folk belief, a worm from the soil. The build-up began 2 days later. First, Enya's own sterilized probe, sealed in a biohazard bag in her trunk, was found in the morning coated in a fine, reddish dust, like powdered clay. Then, her government-issued SUV, parked outside her temporary rental, had its tires slashed not with a knife, but with what the responding deputy's report called a sharpened stone or bone tool. A crude symbol was scratched into the driver's side door, a spiral with a line through it. The most disturbing event was digital. Her case database, password protected and locally stored, was corrupted. The patient addresses and names were replaced, in each field, with a single GPS coordinate. When plotted, all points converged on a single, isolated structure at the end of the colonia's lane, a place not on her official maps. Driven now by equal parts professional duty and personal unease, Anya decided to investigate. She bypassed the local clinic and went directly to the structure, a low adobe dwelling built partially into the side of the arroyo bank. The air there was still and thick, smelling of dried herbs, earth, and something coppery. An elderly man she would later know only as Don Esteban was waiting in the shade of his porch, as if expecting her. He was not a folk healer in the stereotypical sense. There were no shrines or charms. Instead, his home resembled a rustic laboratory. Drying racks held unusual desert plants, shelves contained jars of soil samples labeled in meticulous Spanish, and a powerful microscope set on a sturdy table. Don Esteban, according to Enya's subsequent sworn affidavit given to her superiors, spoke calmly. He confirmed the infection was not a typical bacterium, but a dormant organism activated by a specific, engineered contaminant in the soil, worm only in the sense of its burrowing nature. He claimed a local brujo, a practitioner of harmful magic, had been paid to salt the earth of the 3 families' properties due to a land dispute. The cure was not an antibiotic, but a poultice made from a specific lichen that grew only where a certain mineral layer was exposed by water. He had already treated 2 of the children in secret, and their lesions were receding. Anya, the scientist, was skeptical. But then Don Esteban showed her his microscope slides. Compared to her own CDC standard images, his revealed the same bizarre bacterial structures, but in a state of dissolution, surrounded by foreign, plant-based cells that were actively breaking them down. It was a biological counteragent. The reveal came not from Don Esteban, but from what happened next. As Anya was examining the slides, a black SUV with government plates pulled up in a cloud of dust. 2 men in plain clothes, identifying themselves as agents with the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, demanded she cease all unauthorized consultation and relinquish her field notes. Their arrival was impossibly fast. She had told no one of her visit. Don Esteban merely nodded, as if this too was expected. As the agents escorted Anya forcefully to her vehicle, she saw one of them hand Don Esteban a thick envelope. It was not a confrontation, it was a transaction. The aftermath is documented in cold, clinical terms. The official outbreak report, filed by the state, concludes the infection was a rare but naturally occurring soil mycobacterium. It states the cluster was contained through aggressive topical and systemic antibiotic therapy, a direct contradiction Anya's own treatment logs, which showed therapy failure. Her request for a sample of Don Esteban's lichen for analysis was formally denied on grounds of non-standardized therapeutic sourcing. The corrupted database was blamed on a software anomaly. The agents who confronted her were verified as legitimate HOIG personnel, but their site visit report makes no mention of Don Esteban or any interaction with the local healer. It cites only an interview with field personnel regarding protocol adherence. Dr. Anya Sharma was reassigned to a desk in Austin 2 weeks later. The verification of her nightmare lies in the evidence she smuggled out: a single, blurry cell phone photo of Don Esteban's microscope slide, and a tiny sample of the reddish dust from her probe, sealed in a glove. Private analysis paid for out of her own pocket found the dust contained not just clay but microscopic particles of engineered silica and a proprietary protein-based compound used in advanced biocontrol agriculture, a soil treatment, but one not legal for use in the United States. The spiral symbol scratched into her car was identified by a cultural anthropologist as a very old, very specific ward against earth-born malice. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is what happened to the land. 6 months after the outbreak was declared over, a sudden, violent flash flood tore through El Arroyo de la Sangre. It scoured the banks, collapsing part of Don Esteban's home, and completely burying the properties of the 3 infected families under 6 feet of sterile, imported sand and gravel. The county declared it a natural disaster and a tragic coincidence. But Dr. Sharma's final unsubmitted addendum to her report posed a single unanswered question: why did the floodwaters, according to satellite imagery she reviewed, appear to originate from a single dry point upstream, as if a dam had been deliberately released? The earth, it seemed, had been sanitized.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The night clerk at the Laredo Motel. Leo Gutierrez was a 58-year-old retired high school history teacher who took the overnight clerk position at the Siesta Inn on the outskirts of Laredo to make ends meet after his pension was cut. He was a creature of habit and quiet observation, finding a strange solace in the monotonous rhythm of the PM to AM shift. His world was the glow of the ancient computer monitor, the smell of industrial coffee, and the parade of weary truckers, clandestine couples, and lost souls that passed through the lobby's flickering fluorescent light. His normalcy was a ledger book, a copy of a historical nonfiction paperback, and the reliable, static-laden feed from the 4 black and white security cameras covering the parking lot. This predictable solitude was shattered during the early hours of March 3, 2021. The incident began, according to the handwritten logbook Leo maintained meticulously and later provided to investigators, at 3:17 a.m. A vehicle pulled into the far corner of the lot, beyond the reach of the strongest overhead lamp. Camera 4 showed it to be a late model, white Ford pickup, common as dirt in Texas. but it parked with its nose against the cinderblock wall bordering the desert, its headlights extinguishing a full minute before the driver's door opened. A figure emerged, moving with a stiff, deliberate gait toward the motel office. Leo noted the time, the vehicle description, and prepared his standard greeting. The man who entered was tall, dressed in clean but worn blue jeans and a denim jacket. His face was angular, pale under the lobby lights, and his eyes, Leo would later tell police, had a glassy, distant look, like a man listening to a radio. Only he could hear. The man, who gave his name as John Miller, paid for a single night in cash, requesting room 114, a ground floor unit at the very end of the building, directly in the blind spot between cameras 2 and 3. He asked for no amenities, offered no conversation, and took his key card with a nod that was more mechanical than polite. Leo's teacher's instinct noted the absence of luggage. He watched on camera one as the man walked to room 114, entered, and closed the door. The red, occupied light above the door frame illuminated. Then, nothing. For exactly 33 minutes. At 3:50 a.m., the door to room 114 opened. The man stepped out, but he was not alone. From the darkened room, a second figure followed, then a third, and a fourth. In total, according to Leo's count, verified against the choppy camera footage, 11 individuals filed out of the single room. They were all of similar height and build, all dressed in similarly nondescript dark clothing, and all moved with the same unnervingly synchronized, stiff gait. They walked in a single file line, not toward the white pickup, but directly into the scrub desert behind the motel, vanishing into the shadows beyond the camera's range. The white pickup remained unmoving against the wall. Leo's sense of professional detachment evaporated. He called the non-emergency line of the Laredo Police Department. The call log records a confused but insistent clerk reporting a possible smuggling situation with an impossible number of subjects exiting a single room. A patrol unit was dispatched, with an ETA of 15 minutes. During that wait, Leo focused on room 114's door on the monitor. At 4:02 a.m., the occupied light went out. The door did not open. The lights simply went dark, as if the room had been vacated at the main panel. Driven by a mix of duty and dread, Leo took the master key and left the desk, something strictly forbidden by motel policy. The hallway to room 114 was silent, the carpet muffling his steps. He could smell a faint, sharp odor of ozone and ammonia. The door was locked. Using the master key, he pushed it open. The room was pristine. The bed was made, the TV remote centered on the nightstand, the shower dry. The climate control was off. It was as if no one had ever entered. But the air was cold, at least 20 degrees colder than the hallway. And on the cheap wooden desk, centered perfectly, was a single object, a small, handmade clay figurine, crude and smooth, depicting a humanoid shape with an elongated head and oversized eyes. Next to it was the key card for the room. The police arrived. Their report, filed under a routine suspicious activity case number, confirms Leo's account of the call and the single vehicle. It notes the room was found in order, with no evidence of occupancy. The figurine was collected as possible lost property. The officers ran the plates on the white pickup. The registration came back to a John Miller of San Antonio. When contacted later that morning, the real John Miller, a retired plumber, was baffled. His truck had been parked in his locked garage all night. He had never been to Laredo. A subsequent forensic examination of the figurine, mentioned in an addendum to the report, found no fingerprints. The clay was of a type common to the region, but the shaping showed no tool marks, as if it had been formed by hand under tremendous, uniform pressure. The aftermath for Leo was a quiet, professional dismantling. The motel's owner, wary of police attention and potential immigration controversies, fired Leo for leaving the front desk unattended. The official narrative became one of an overworked, imaginative night clerk possibly falling asleep and misinterpreting a mundane event. The verification of Leo's nightmare, however, exists in two places. First, in the security hard drive. While the footage shows the 11 figures exiting, a frame-by-frame analysis conducted by a private investigator Leo hired reveals a chilling detail. As each figure passes from the pool of light into the darkness, they do not cast a shadow on the motel wall. Not one. Second, a month after the incident, a border patrol agent off duty and hunting javelina in the same stretch of scrubland behind the Siesta Inn reported finding a small neat pile of 11 sets of folded dark clothing placed carefully on a flat rock. Underneath each stack was a small, damp circle of the same odorless, clay-like soil. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is not from that night, but from a follow-up. Leo conducted himself. Desperate for answers, he visited the county records office. He discovered that the land the Siesta Inn was built on was part of a 19th century land grant originally called El Paso de los Silenciosos, the Pass of the Silent Ones. Local folklore buried in a historical society journal spoke of clay men that would sometimes be seen crossing the desert in single file mimicking human form, but never speaking, claiming no identity, moving with a purpose known only to the earth itself. Leo Gutierrez, the history teacher, had not witnessed a smuggling operation. He had, according to the oldest stories of that patch of dirt, checked in a traveler who was not a man at all, and who had brought his own congregation with him, folded away in a form the dimensions of a motel room could somehow contain.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The Falcon Dam frequency. Captain Maria Flores of the Texas Department of Public Safety Marine Patrol was a 42-year-old veteran of the Rio Grande. She knew the river's moods, its hidden sandbars, and its legitimate traffic. Her normalcy was the thrum of her patrol boat's twin outboards, the crackle of the VHF radio on Channel 16, and the relentless South Texas sun. Her assignment in the fall of 2022 was increase patrols near the Falcon Dam Reservoir, a known corridor for illicit activity. Her tools were radar, intuition, and a deep familiarity with the sound of every legal vessel from a bass boat to a barge. The anomaly began not with a sighting, but with a sound on the night of October 30th. According to her official patrol log, at 2,217 hours, her VHF radio, set to monitor the International Hailing and Distress Channel, began to pick up a weak, overlapping transmission. It was a voice, male, speaking in clear, unaccented English, but with a flat, robotic cadence. The message looped. Falcon Control. This is utility vessel Persephone, approaching grid Delta 7 for scheduled maintenance. Over. The coordinates given for Delta 7 placed it not on the reservoir, but approximately 2 miles into Mexican airspace, over the dry scrubland on the other side of the dam. Furthermore, no utility vessel named Persephone was registered with the International Maritime Organization, the U.S. Coast Guard, or Mexican authorities, a fact confirmed by DPS dispatch that same night. Maria attempted to hail the vessel, requesting clarification. The response was immediate, as if automatically triggered. Falcon Control. This is utility vessel Persephone, approaching grid Delta 7 for scheduled maintenance. Over. The signal strength remained constant, unaffected by her boat's movement or her own transmissions. It was as if the broadcast originated from a fixed, powerful land-based antenna, not a vessel. She notified dispatch of a possible unauthorized transmission mimicking official traffic, a potential security concern. As she continued her patrol, the loop played every 7 minutes, like clockwork. The buildup occurred over the next 90 minutes. First, her boat's marine radar, a state-of-the-art Furuno system, began painting a faint, intermittent ghost return at the exact geographic center of the stated Delta 7 coordinates, over land. The return would appear for exactly 30 seconds every 10 minutes, then vanish. Second, her personal handheld GPS unit began to glitch, its display position jumping erratically before resetting. Her backup magnetic compass, however, remained steady. The final, most personal disturbance came via text message to her department-issued satellite phone. It read simply, "Maintenance is scheduled. Stand clear." The number was a string of zeros. Captain Flores was not prone to panic. She was a sworn officer with the duty to investigate potential hazards to navigation and security threats. She made the decision to move closer to the dam for a visual inspection of the area, though it meant skirting the international boundary. Using night vision binoculars, she scanned the Mexican shoreline near the coordinates. The landscape was dark and still. Then, at 2,348 hours, the looping radio message stopped. In the sudden, silent void, a new sound emerged, a deep, subsonic thrumming she felt in her sternum more than heard. A vibration that made the water's surface shiver into a perfect, agitated pattern of standing waves. From the darkness of the shoreline, a light ignited. Not a navigation light, but a piercing, blue-white beam that lanced vertically into the sky, holding for a count of 5 before cutting off. In that 5-second illumination, Maria's trained eyes saw the silhouette of a structure, a skeletal, industrial tower that had not been on any chart or aerial survey she had ever studied. The reveal was immediate and terrifying. As the light vanished, her VHF radio erupted, not with the Persephone, but with frantic, overlapping Spanish from the Mexican Federal Police on their tactical channel, which her scanner could sometimes pick up. They were reporting an unscheduled aerial incursion and energy discharge at the same coordinates. Then, her own DPS radio blared to life with the top priority alert from a joint U.S. Mexico task force she had never heard activated before. All units, clear the Falcon zone immediately. This is a sovereign shield directive. Acknowledge and retreat to Grid Bravo. The order used a code word she knew was reserved for imminent, catastrophic threats or military action. Captain Flores needed no further encouragement. She executed a hard turn, pushing the throttle to full. As she sped away, the radar ghost return at Delta 7 bloomed into a massive, solid contact for a full minute before her entire electronic suite radar, chart plotter, radio went completely dead. Only the mechanical engines continued to run. She navigated by compass and memory back to her assigned dock, her mind replaying the image of that impossible tower. The aftermath was a wall of official silence, wrapped in bureaucratic procedure. Her boat was met by 2 plainclothes DPS officials and a technician from an unnamed contractor. They impounded her vessel's black box data recorder and her satellite phone. Her debriefing lasted 8 hours and was not recorded in the standard internal affairs system. Instead, she signed a non-disclosure agreement citing the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. The official report, a single paragraph in the weekly Marine Patrol summary, noted she had experienced temporary electronic interference consistent with suspected illicit jamming equipment and properly followed retreat protocols. The Mexican police transmissions were attributed to a joint training exercise she was not briefed on. The verification of Captain Flores's nightmare is twofold. First, a civilian astronomer at the University of Texas's McDonald Observatory reviewing automated all-sky camera footage from that night for meteor activity logged an anomalous atmospheric luminous event over the Falcon Dam region at 23:48:12, the exact time of the blue-white beam. His report was forwarded to the U.S. Air Force and never made public. Second, and more personally, Maria's handheld GPS unit, once it rebooted, retained a single, corrupted track log. It showed her boat's path, and then, originating from the Delta 7 coordinates, a perfect, straight-line trajectory heading not across the river, but straight up, into the stratosphere, at an impossible speed. The file was date-stamped for the duration of the blackout. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is auditory. A month after the incident, Captain Flores was placed on temporary administrative duty. Bored and troubled, she began scanning archived radio frequency recordings online. On a forum for numbers station enthusiasts, she found a file uploaded by a shortwave listener in McAllen. Dated the same night as her experience, it contained a clear recording of the looping Persephone transmission. But in the background, under the robotic voice, keen-eared listeners had isolated another sound, almost erased by filtering, a slow, rhythmic, metallic scraping, like a heavy door being dragged across a concrete floor, again and again. And beneath even that, so faint it was debated to be auditory pareidolia, was what some claimed were human whispers, pleading in multiple languages, all saying the same phrase in translation: "The schedule is wrong."
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The water samples from Pinto Creek. Rafael Cruz was a 47-year-old hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, a man whose world was defined by empirical data. His assignment to the remote Pinto Creek watershed in Valverde County in the spring of 2023 was a routine groundwater quality survey, part of a long-term study on aquifer depletion. Rafael's normalcy was the precise weight of his sampling kit, the sterile glass bottles, the calibrated instruments, and the profound, isolating silence of the Chihuahuan Desert canyons. He was there to measure nitrates, salinity, and heavy metals, not to witness anomalies. His camp was a Spartan affair: a government-issue tent, a propane stove, and a satellite uplink for daily data transmission. The inciting incident occurred on his fourth day, at sampling station Bravo 7, a GPS-marked location at the base of a limestone cliff, where a seasonal seep created a small, algae-filled pool. According to his field notebook, at 10:42 a.m. on April 12, he collected his standard 500 milliliter sample. The water was clear, but had a faint, alkaline smell. As he sealed the bottle, a shadow fell over him. He looked up to see a man standing on the cliff ledge 30 feet above, silhouetted against the harsh sun. The man was tall, wearing what appeared to be a dark, full-body environmental suit, though it lacked any visible logos or ventilation apparatus. He made no sound. Rafael called out a greeting, but the figure simply turned and walked out of view along the cliff edge, moving with an unnerving fluidity over the rough terrain. Rafael noted the encounter as a possible researcher from another agency, but was unsettled by the suit. It was wrong for the 95-degree heat. The buildup began that evening back at camp. His multi-parameter water quality sonde, a $15,000 piece of equipment, gave erratic readings for the Bravo 7 sample. The pH was a biologically impossible 12.8, the dissolved oxygen was negative, and the conductivity spiked off the charts. He assumed sensor fouling and ran a calibration check. The sensors were perfect. He then examined the sample visually. Holding his high-intensity field lamp to the glass, he saw not the expected microscopic particles, but a faint, internal shimmer, slow, syrupy movement within the water itself, as if it were thicker than water. A drop on his glove didn't bead and run. It spread slowly, like oil, and left a faint, iridescent sheen when it dried. Alarmed, he initiated the contamination protocol, sealing the sample in a secondary biohazard container. That night, his satellite uplink, which had transmitted data flawlessly for days, failed. The failure log indicated localized signal degradation. Then, at 2:17 a.m., motion-activated infrared trail cameras he'd set up for wildlife monitoring triggered. The images, retrieved later, showed not animal, but three of the suited figures moving silently through the scrub between his camp and the canyon rim. They were not walking toward his camp. They were forming a loose perimeter around it. By morning, Rafael's scientific curiosity had been overtaken by a deep, professional dread. He decided to return to Bravo 7 for a second sample and to document the area. When he arrived, the seep was dry, not parched, but dry as if it had never existed. The algae now brittle flakes on sun-baked stone. In the center of the depression was a single, smooth, metallic cylinder, the size of a soda can, warm to the touch. It was featureless except for a faint seam around its middle. This was no natural object. He photographed it with his GPS-equipped camera and, against all protocol, placed it in his sample bag. On his hike back, he felt watched. The desert was preternaturally silent. No insects, no wind, no distant birds. The reveal happened at his truck. His government-issue Ford F-150, parked on the bluff above the canyon, was dead. Not just the battery, but completely unresponsive. The electronic locks, ignition, and even the emergency flashers were inert. The vehicle was a 3-ton paperweight. As he stared at it, his handheld radio, set to the USGS operations frequency, crackled to life. A voice, synthesized and genderless, spoke. leave the collection. Proceed on foot to the North Access Road. Your vehicle will be restored. The transmission was not on the channel list. It overrode everything. Raphael looked from the dead truck to the bag containing the strange cylinder. They didn't want him. They wanted the sample and the object. He made a choice, hiding the sample bag and the cylinder in a crevice under a rock. He marked the spot on his GPS and began the 8-mile hike to the paved road. After 30 minutes of walking, he heard the distant, electric whine of motors, not internal combustion, but a high-pitched, efficient sound. Looking back from a rise, he saw two matte black, 6-wheeled all-terrain vehicles, unlike any commercial or military models he knew, approaching his truck. Figures in the same dark suits moved around it. Within minutes, his truck's lights flicked on. The vehicles then sped toward the mouth of the canyon where Bravo 7 was located. They were cleaning up. The aftermath is documented in dry, administrative language. Raphael hitched a ride to the local DPS office. His report, filed under the USGS Field Hazard and Security Incident Protocol, triggered an immediate, joint agency response. The official summary states that a hydrologist encountered unauthorized personnel potentially engaged in industrial espionage or dumping, and that all sampled materials were stolen. The dead vehicle was explained as a coincidental total systems failure. The cylinder and the anomalous water sample were never recovered. The GPS coordinates Raphael provided led to an empty, scorched patch of earth. The trail camera footage was reviewed by federal partners and deemed inconclusive. The verification of Raphael's nightmare lies in the residual evidence. A soil assay from the spot where his truck was disabled showed nanoscale traces of a proprietary carbon fiber filament used in some advanced aerospace components. Furthermore, review of satellite imagery by a colleague not part of the official inquiry showed that for a 6-hour window on April 12, all commercial satellite passes over the Pinto Creek watershed were clouded by what was logged as a technical anomaly, but which matched the signature of a localized electromagnetic pulse. Most tellingly, Raphael's personal health screening, required after potential hazardous material exposure, showed a transient but sharp spike in ambient radiation exposure on that exact day, at a level just below the reportable threshold. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is hydrological. 6 weeks after the incident, Raphael was reviewing historical data for the Pinto Creek aquifer. He discovered that for a 48-hour period following his encounter, the water level in 3 monitoring wells spaced miles apart dropped by exactly 2.7 centimeters. Then, it rebounded to the previous level. The data was automatic and verified. It was as if something had precisely and temporarily extracted a vast, measured volume of water from the entire subterranean system, then returned it, or replaced it. Raphael Cruz no longer conducts fieldwork. He requested and was granted a permanent desk position, analyzing data from the safety of an office in Austin. The desert, he now believes, is not just an ecosystem. It is, in some places, a reservoir for things far more alien than water.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The dead man's CB. Lydia Warren was a 38-year-old long-haul trucker who had been running the I-35 corridor from Laredo to Dallas for a decade. Her world was the rumble of her Freightliner's diesel, the glow of the dashboard, and the late-night chatter on CB Channel 19. Her normalcy was the road, the rhythm of rest stops, and the camaraderie of handles like Steel Horse or Dixie Dreamer. She was a practical, no-nonsense woman who trusted her instincts and her rig. That changed on a rain-slicked night in November 2022, just north of the border checkpoint near Encinal. The inciting incident was a voice on the CB. According to Lydia's later testimony given to a private investigator, at around 1:30 a.m., a new signal cut through the usual traffic. The voice was male, old, and scratchy with poor reception, but crystal clear in its distress. Breaker 19. This is wildfire. I'm off the road. I'm off the road at the old mile marker 42 service road. They're in the trees. They're coming out of the trees. Someone copy? The call was followed by a sound of tearing metal and a scream that was abruptly cut off. Then dead air. The old mile marker 42 had been changed years ago during highway expansion. Only veteran drivers would know. It referred to a derelict unmaintained access road that ran parallel to the interstate for a few hundred yards before vanishing into thick mesquite. Lydia, along with a few other truckers, responded. No answer. A driver ahead called back, saying he'd take the next exit and circle back to check. 10 minutes later, that driver's voice came back confused. Yeah, huh? I'm at that old turn off. There's nothing here. No rig, no lights. Just mud and trees. Maybe it was a prank. The channel moved on. But Lydia couldn't. The terror in Wildfire's voice had been too raw, too specific. They're coming out of the trees. The buildup was a series of small, jarring details over the next week. First, she asked at a truck stop diner frequented by old-timers if anyone knew a handle Wildfire. An aged waitress froze, her coffee pot hovering. Ain't heard that handle in 20 years, she said quietly. Fella named Carl, haunted chemical tankers. Went missing one night on I-35. Never found his truck. Second, on her next run south, Lydia took the modern exit near where the old mile marker would have been. Driving slowly down the frontage road, she saw something glinting in the ditch. It was a broken pair of trucker's sunglasses, style at least 2 decades old, half buried in the mud. She left them there. The final push came on her next northbound run. A massive thunderstorm forced her to pull off at a remote way station to wait it out. Alone in the cab, the rain hammering the roof, she scanned the CB channels idly. Through the static, she heard it again. The same scratchy voice, the same words, but this time, it was a perfect, clear loop, as if from a recording. Breaker 19. This is Wildfire. I'm off the road. It played twice, then dissolved into a loud, clear burst of Morse code. Lydia, whose father had been a ham radio operator, recognized it instantly. It was a repeating pattern, ripe. She reported the CB harassment to the state police. The report was filed as a nuisance incident, but Lydia, now obsessed, visited the county clerk's office in the next town. In the archived microfiche of the local newspaper, she found it, a brief article from October 1998. Search continues for missing trucker Carl Wildfire Jenkins, 52, and his tanker truck vanished on Interstate 35. Last transmission to Highway Patrol reported figures on the road before going silent. No truck, no chemical payload, and no Carl Jenkins were ever found. The reveal happened when Lydia decided to stop being a passive listener. On a clear, moonlit night, she parked her rig legally at a rest area near the old mile marker. At exactly 1:30 a.m., she tuned her CB to channel 19, activated her external microphone, and broadcast. Wildfire, this is Lydia. I read you. What's your 20? Static hissed. Then, the voice came back, but different. It was no longer a recording. It was interactive, drained of panic, filled instead with a terrible, hollow calm. Lydia, you shouldn't have called. They're listening on the channel. They always listen. Before she could respond, a new signal overrode everything, a blistering wave of static that physically hurt her ears. And within that static, she could hear other voices, dozens, maybe hundreds, whispering, moaning, all trapped in the white noise. And a clearer, colder voice cutting through. This channel is occupied. Find another. Shaken, Lydia went to start her rig. The engine turned over, but died immediately. All her electronics, the GPS, the radio, even the digital clock flashed and reset to 0. In the sudden silence, she looked out her passenger window. The tree line of the mesquite thicket was 30 yards away. Between the trunks, in the deep shadow, she saw points of faint, amber light. Not reflections. They were paired, and they were moving, slowly, deliberately, emerging from the trees and starting to cross the open field toward the rest area. Lydia didn't wait for a better look. She prayed, turned the key again, and the engine roared to life. She didn't bother with lights. She threw the truck into gear and sped onto the interstate entrance ramp, her heart hammering against her ribs. She did not look back. The aftermath is a matter of public record and private terror. Lydia filed a more detailed report with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, Regarding electronic harassment and possible signal hijacking, she was interviewed once by a bored-sounding agent who suggested she change her CB frequencies. The verification of her nightmare exists in the physical world. The next day, in daylight and with a friend in another truck, she returned to the rest area. In the soft mud at the edge of the tree line, they found footprints. They were deep, as if made by something heavy, but completely smooth salt, showing no tread pattern, and they led from the trees to within 50 feet of where her truck had been parked, then simply stopped, as if whatever made them had vanished. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is about the payload. Lydia later researched what Carl Wildfire Jenkins was hauling the night he vanished. The bill of lading, obtained from a retired shipping company employee, listed it as a specialized industrial solvent. However, a footnote in the missing persons investigation, overlooked for years, noted a discrepancy. The chemical serial number on the manifest corresponded to a solvent that had been reformulated in 1995. The version Carl was likely carrying was an older, more volatile formula that, under specific conditions of extreme pressure and electrical charge, could become highly unstable. The FBI file on his disappearance, partially released, concludes with a single, puzzling line: "No evidence of spill or contamination located," suggesting possible intact removal of vehicle and contents. Lydia doesn't believe they wanted Carl or his truck. She believes they wanted what was in his tank. And the CB channel, all these years later, isn't just a ghost story. It's a monitoring frequency, and the dead man's call is both a warning and a beacon. She no longer uses her CB radio. She has it disconnected, but sometimes, on the loneliest stretches of I-35, she'll see the power light flicker on by itself, and she'll drive a little faster, refusing to listen for the whispers and the static.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The Church of the Second Dawn. Father Benito Ben Reyes was a 28-year-old Catholic priest newly assigned to the mission parish serving 3 dying ranching communities in the Big Bend region. He was an idealist, a man who believed in the tangible good of community soup kitchens and youth programs. His normalcy was the worn leather of his Bible, the dry heat of the chapel, and the familiar, weathered faces of his elderly parishioners. He had come to minister to the living, not to excavate the past. That changed when he began visiting the bedridden Mrs. Alma Garcia, the last surviving resident of the all-but ghost town of Soledad, in the summer of 2023. According to Father Ben's pastoral notes, his visits with Alma were initially routine. She was frail, sharp-minded, and deeply devout. The inciting incident occurred during his 3rd visit. As he prepared to leave, Alma gripped his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, seemed to look through him. "They are coming back, Father. The ones from the canyon. The Segundo Amanecer. They will want the book." She spoke of the Church of the Second Dawn, a name he found in no diocesan record. When he gently pressed her, she clammed up, crossing herself repeatedly. Later, checking historical society archives, Ben found only a single, typewritten footnote in a 1947 county history. The Second Dawn congregation, led by a Reverend Elias, dissolved c. 1932, following controversy over unorthodox baptismal practices. Location believed to be near Soledad Canyon. The buildup was subtle and administrative. First, the mission's landline began receiving silent calls every evening at 7:05 p.m. Calls that would last exactly 1 minute before disconnecting. The caller ID showed only out of area. Then, the photocopier in the parish office began producing, intermixed with normal copies, sheets of perfect, intricate geometric patterns, concentric circles, and intersecting lines that were not part of any original document. The toner cartridge was new. Ben dismissed it as a mechanical glitch until he showed the patterns to Alma on his next visit. She touched the paper and recoiled as if burned. "Their mark," she whispered. The geometry of the deep place. Driven by pastoral duty and growing unease, Father Ben decided to locate the church. Using Alma's fragmented descriptions and a handheld GPS, he hiked into Soledad Canyon. He found it just before dusk. A low, sandstone structure built directly into the canyon wall, half collapsed, its wooden door long rotted away. The air inside was cool and still, smelling of dust and ancient, mineral-rich water. Using his flashlight, he saw the interior was not a standard chapel. The walls were carved with those same geometric patterns, and at the far end was a stone font, not for holy water, but fed by a slow, steady drip from a fissure in the rock above. The water in the font was clear, but the stone beneath the drip was stained a deep, permanent crimson, as if from centuries of iron deposits or something else. The reveal was in the church's only intact artifact. In a small, hollowed-out alcove, Ben found a book. It was not a Bible. It was a thick ledger, bound in what felt like oilskin. Its pages were filled with columns of names, dates from 1910 to 1932, and a single, repeated symbol, a circle with a dot in the center, submerged under a wavy line. Next to each name was a handwritten notation: witnessed, accepted, or returned. The final entry, for April 17, 1932, simply read, Elias, returned. The gate is thirsty. As Ben stared, his flashlight beam caught something shimmering at the bottom of the stone font. Reaching in, his fingers closed around a small, smooth object. It was a modern, stainless steel wedding band. Inscribed inside were a name and a date from 2011. This was no historical curiosity. This was recent. Ben took the ring and the ledger. That night, back at the mission, he examined the ledger under bright light. The returned entries had small, dark stains next to them. Testing one with a damp cloth, it smeared a faint, rusty brown. Blood, aged to dust. He then looked up the name from the wedding band online. It belonged to a man from Odessa reported missing in 2015 after telling his wife he was going on a spiritual retreat in West Texas. His case was still open. Father Ben did what he believed was right. He contacted the county sheriff and the missing persons detective in Odessa, presenting the ledger and the ring as potential evidence. The aftermath was a study in bureaucratic paralysis. The sheriff took the items, filed a report, and sent the ledger for analysis. The State Crime Lab's report, which Ben later obtained through a public records request, confirmed the stains were human blood of multiple, very old types. The geometric patterns were identified as consistent with certain esoteric survey markings. The case was deemed a possible cold case homicide cluster, but without bodies, it went inactive. The church was declared a historical site and fenced off by the county for safety. The verification of Father Ben's nightmare, however, is in the living response. The silent phone call stopped the day he turned the ledger over, but a week later, he received a typed letter with no return address. It read, "You have returned what was borrowed. The account is balanced. Do not seek further withdrawals." The second dawn is patient. It was signed with a drawn symbol, the circle, dot, and wavy line. More chillingly, when he next visited Alma Garcia, she was sitting up in bed, her eyes clear for the first time. She smiled at him, a smile devoid of its former fear. "You gave it back," she said calmly. "Good. They only want what's theirs. The baptisms must continue. The canyon is always thirsty." She passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 nights later. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is hydrological and ongoing. Father Ben, now transferred to a parish in San Antonio at his own request, still monitors the area news. Every few months, a hiker or a rancher in that region of the Big Bend reports finding a single, personal item: a watch, a key, a necklace placed neatly on a rock near a dry creek bed or canyon rim. The items are always clean, always modern, and always traceable to a person who has been missing for years. The local authorities list them as found property, a macabre, slow drip return of effects from the returned. Father Ben believes the stone font in that canyon church was never for baptism. It was a registry, and the ledger wasn't a membership list. It was a ledger of transactions, with the earth itself as the other party. The church may be fenced off, but according to the slow, patient evidence, its core practice never ceased.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The Skywatch at Marfa. Catherine Kat Chen was a 33-year-old astrophysics postdoc from Caltech, a woman of equations and photon counts. Her normalcy was the hum of servers, the clean lines of data on a screen, and the profound silence of the vacuum between stars. She was in Marfa for 6 weeks in the fall of 2022, not for the famous lights, but to use the university's specialized radio telescope array to study a faint, distant pulsar. Her world was one of calibrated instruments and predictable celestial mechanics. The anomaly began not as a light, but as an absence of data on the night of September 28th. According to her observational log, at 22:14 hours, her target pulsar's signal, a steady, metronomic beat that had been constant for weeks, suddenly vanished from the radio spectrum for precisely 4.7 seconds. In its place, the array recorded a burst of structured, complex radio noise that formed a perfect, mathematically elegant Fibonacci spiral when translated into a visual spectrogram. This was not natural, it was a signal. The array's automatic systems flagged it as RFI, radio frequency interference, a man-made contaminant. But Kat knew the array's shielding. This signal had an origin point, approximately 300 meters above ground level, 3 miles due east of her trailer, in the empty desert. The inciting incident was a conversation. Puzzled, Kat radioed the only other person on the lease that night, Dennis, the 65-year-old maintenance supervisor and a Marfa native. When she described the location, Dennis went quiet on the other end of the line. "That's the old Dooley Ranch," he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically grim. "Place has been abandoned since the 70s. Sheriff's department boards it up. Kids break in. But you're not the first sky watcher to get funny readings from out there." He refused to elaborate over the radio, but agreed to meet her for coffee the next morning. Over coffee, Dennis laid out the buildup, not with data, but with local history. He spoke of ranchers in the 60s and 70s reporting cold spots and equipment failures on that land, of a USDA soil survey team in the 80s that packed up and left early, their report citing unexplained magnetic anomalies. Most compellingly, he told her about a university team like hers in the late 90s that had pointed a portable optical telescope toward the ranch house for a lark. Their digital images, he claimed, showed people standing in the windows, clear as day, but when they looked with their own eyes, the house was empty. The team's hard drive crashed that night, erasing all data. Skeptical, but intrigued, Kat decided on a dual approach. She would continue her radio observations, programming the array to monitor the Dooley Ranch coordinates, and she would conduct a daylight ground survey. What she found at the ranch was unsettling in its normalcy: a crumbling, boarded-up farmhouse, a rusted windmill, miles of empty scrub. Yet her handheld Geiger counter clicked persistently at triple the background radiation, and her compass spun lazily when she stood on the porch. She also found, nailed to a fence post far from the house, a relatively new, official-looking sign, sun-bleached but legible, property of the United States government. No trespassing. Geological Survey Station #A-77. There was no phone number, no agency logo. That night, the signal returned. This time, it wasn't a burst. It was a slow, repeating pattern of 5 tones, followed by 4.7 seconds of silence, then 5 different tones. It was a sequence. Kat, her scientific blood now up, began recording it directly to a hardened, isolated laptop. As she worked, she noticed her trailer's lights dimming and brightening rhythmically, in time with the silent gaps. The desert outside was pitch black. Then, her security light triggered, flooding the area around her trailer with harsh, white light. In that illumination, she saw them. 3 figures, standing at the edge of the light's reach, halfway between her and the main array building. They were tall, impossibly thin, and motionless. They wore dark, hooded coats, though the night was warm, and they were staring directly at her trailer, their faces in deep shadow. Kat froze, her hand hovering over the radio to call Dennis. Before she could, the figures, in perfect unison, turned and walked away, not toward the road, but into the absolute darkness of the desert. They were gone in seconds. 5 minutes later, the strange radio signal ceased. The pulsar's steady beat returned as if nothing had happened. The security lights switched off. The reveal came from the data, not the encounter. Kat spent the next day analyzing the tone sequence. It was not random. The intervals between the tones corresponded to prime numbers. The sequence repeated, but each repetition was modulated by a different, complex mathematical constant. This was a beacon, or a diagnostic signal, of staggering sophistication. She cross-referenced the Geological Survey Station number. It existed in no public database. A discreet call to a friend at the USGS confirmed no station with that designation existed in Texas. Her friend, after a long pause, advised her to drop it. The aftermath was professional and chilling. Kat included the anomalous signal and its terrestrial coordinates in her end-of-project report to her Caltech advisor, classifying it as unidentified localized RFI of possible intelligence. The report was accepted. 2 weeks after her return to California, 2 men in dark suits visited her advisor's office. She was not present. Her advisor later told her, his face pale, that they were from Air Force Office of Special Investigations. They requested the raw data from the Marfa trip. They were polite, thorough, and left with a signed receipt for her hard drives. The official follow-up email from her department chair suggested that, for future funding prospects, it might be wise to focus on less contentious astronomical phenomena. The verification of Kat's nightmare is in the enduring mystery of the location itself. A year after her project, a National Weather Service satellite malfunctioned during a pass over West Texas. The sole image it sent back before failing showed a perfect, disc-shaped area of absolute thermal blankness, no heat signature at all, centered on the Dooley Ranch coordinates, surrounded by the normal warm desert. The image was flagged and removed from public archives within an hour, but not before being cached on a satellite imagery enthusiast server. Furthermore, Dennis, the maintenance man, emailed her a single, grainy photo taken by a hunter a month after she left. It showed the old ranch house at dusk. In one upstairs window, clearly visible, was the silhouette of a tall, thin figure. And in the foreground of the shot, glowing faintly against the gathering dark, were 3 small, stacked stones arranged in a perfect Fibonacci spiral. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is the signal's purpose. Kat, now working in the private sector, sometimes runs the tone sequence through new decryption algorithms as a personal obsession. Recently, a pattern emerged. When the tones are translated using a base 6 mathematical system and mapped onto a topographical grid of the Marfa region, they plot a subsurface path. A path that leads from the Dooley Ranch, down through layers of ancient aquifer and volcanic rock, and terminates at a single, specific point, the foundation of the abandoned Soledad Canyon Church from Story 7. The 2 sites, one a focus of radio energy from above, the other a site of bloody ritual below, are mathematically linked. The signal from the Skywatch wasn't calling into space. It was calling down, into the earth, to something that was already here, waiting to be accounted for.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The ranch hand at Las Palomas. Hector Morales was a 41-year-old ranch foreman at the sprawling Las Palomas cattle operation in Presidio County. His life was one of sun, sweat, and saddle leather. His normalcy was the pre-dawn feed run, the temperamental moods of black Brangus cattle, and the deep, abiding silence of 50,000 acres of high desert. Hector trusted what he could see, smell, and fix with his hands. He had little time for stories. That changed in the winter of 2021, during the annual gather to bring cattle down from the high pastures. The inciting incident was the livestock count. According to the ranch's detailed breeding logs, they had turned out 247 head into the north section in the spring. As Hector and his 2 hands, Luis and Tom S., drove the cattle toward the lower pens, the count was consistently short by 13 animals. This was unusual, but not unprecedented. Predators, sickness, and rough terrain could account for losses. However, when they reached the final high pasture, a box canyon known as El Silencio, they found the missing 13. They were dead, but not from coyotes or disease. The cattle were laid out in a perfect, wide circle, on its side, heads pointing outward. There were no visible wounds, no blood on the ground. Their eyes were open, glassy, and their tongues were swollen and black. The air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt hair. Hector radioed the owner and the local veterinarian, Dr. Alvarez. The vet's report, filed with the Texas Animal Health Commission, listed the cause of death as acute systemic organ failure, possibly due to toxic plant ingestion. But Hector, who knew every inch of that pasture, knew there were no toxic plants of that potency in El Silencio. He also noticed something the vet missed. The grass within the circle of dead cattle was bleached bone white, brittle to the touch, and crumbled to dust when stepped on. The soil underneath was sterile, devoid of insects or microbes. The buildup was environmental. Over the next month, oddities piled up. The ranch's perimeter motion sensor lights, powered by solar panels, began draining their batteries completely within hours of sunset, as if something was drawing power from them all night long. Then, the cattle in the pens closest to the foothills leading to El Silencio grew agitated every night at the same time. 9:47 p.m., they would mill in tight, clockwise circles, lowing in distress for exactly 15 minutes before calming down. Security camera footage from the main barn, reviewed by Hector, showed nothing causing the disturbance, just the cattle reacting to an unseen stimulus. The final straw was personal. Hector's prize blue heeler, Cisco, refused to enter the north section. The dog would stand at the gate, hair on end, and emit a continuous, low growl directed not at anything in sight, but at the air itself. One afternoon, Hector found Cisco in his truck bed, trembling, a thin trickle of blood from his nose. A rushed trip to the vet revealed minor, unexplained capillary bursts in the dog's sinuses, like he'd been exposed to a sudden, drastic change in air pressure, Dr. Alvarez noted, bewildered. Hector, a pragmatic man, decided on a surveillance operation. He set up a trail camera on a bluff overlooking El Silencio and a portable weather station to monitor for sudden pressure drops. For a week, nothing. Then, on the 8th night, the camera triggered at 9:47 p.m. The image was a blur of static. The weather station, however, recorded a data spike, a localized, instantaneous drop in barometric pressure equivalent to the eye of a Category 2 hurricane, lasting 4.7 seconds, accompanied by a temperature plunge of 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It returned to normal just as fast. The grass at the station's location was frost-burned by morning. The reveal required a daylight expedition. Armed with a shovel and a sampling kit, Hector returned to the center of the circle where the cattle had died. The soil was still dead and powdery. He began to dig. About 3 feet down, his shovel struck not rock, but metal. Brushing away the dirt, he uncovered a smooth, curved surface of dull, gray alloy. It was not rusted. It was seamless, with no visible seams or welds. It was clearly manufactured, but unlike any steel or aluminum he knew. And it was huge, extending beyond the edges of his hole. He was standing on the buried roof of something. He took photos with his phone and collected a soil sample from where the metal met the earth. That night, back at the ranch house, he attempted to research. His internet connection, usually reliable, became impossibly slow. Every search for unidentified buried metal object or unexplained cattle deaths timed out. His phone, which had full signal, failed to send the photos. They corrupted in transit. It was as if the topic itself was being suppressed. Frustrated, he drove into town to use the library's computer. As he pulled out of the ranch gate, a sleek, black Chevrolet Suburban with government plates passed him, heading slowly up the road toward the north section. The aftermath is documented in a terse addendum to the veterinarian's report. It states that a follow-up site inspection was conducted by relevant agricultural and environmental authorities, and that no further livestock losses have occurred. The verification of Hector's nightmare lies in the physical evidence that remain. The soil sample he took was analyzed by a private lab in El Paso. The results noted microscopic, spherical metallic particles of unknown composition and signs of intense, rapid heat exposure inconsistent with wildfire. The lab's director, curious, asked where the sample was from. When Hector told him, the man grew quiet. "We've seen similar soil from 2 other ranches near the border," he said. "Always from a circular area, always sterile, The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is about ownership and memory. A month after the incident, Hector was served with the new section of his ranch lease agreement. It was a single-page addendum allegedly from the land trust that owned the mineral rights, stating that any and all artifacts, geological anomalies, or man-made objects discovered below a depth of 24 inches are the sole property of the lessor and are not to be disturbed. The document was signed by a lawyer with a Dallas firm that, when Hector called, had no record of the addendum or the lawyer's name. Furthermore, when Hector tried to discuss the events with his ranch hand Luis, the man looked at him blankly. "What dead cattle, Chief?" Luis had no memory of the circle in El Silencio, nor of the night they found them. Thomas, the other hand, had quit abruptly and left the state without a forwarding address. Hector sometimes drives to the gate of the north section. Cisco still refuses to get out of the truck, and the motion sensor lights continue to die every night, their batteries drained by a thirst no one can see emanating from the perfectly circular sterile patch of ground where something not of this earth has been sleeping and may have briefly woken to feed.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The Border Patrol agent's dash cam. Agent Daniel Vega was a 26-year-old rookie with the United States Border Patrol, assigned to the Laredo sector's night shift. His world was the green glow of thermal imaging scopes, the crackle of encrypted radio traffic, and the tense, endless game of cat and mouse along the river levee. His normalcy was procedure, backup, and the tangible reality of footprints in the mud and exhausted families seeking asylum. He believed in the binary of legal and illegal. That belief fractured on a fog-shrouded morning in February 2023, along a deserted stretch of river road known as Zapata's Bend. The inciting incident was a sensor alert. According to the sector's surveillance log, at 4:22 a.m., a ground seismic sensor near markers EB-17 triggered, indicating movement. The pattern was unusual, not the staggered steps of a group, but a single, heavy, rhythmic impact, like something large and bipedal. Vega, the nearest unit, was dispatched to investigate. The fog was thick, reducing visibility to less than 20 feet. His high beams reflected back as a milky wall. As he crept along the levee road, his thermal camera picked up a heat signature ahead. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but with a grossly distended torso and an ambient heat signature 10 degrees cooler than the surrounding air. It was moving away from the river, into the thick brush of a private hunting lease. Vega called it in. "Dispatch, Bravo 7. I have one individual on thermal, moving east from the river. Signature is abnormal, requesting backup for pursuit." The response was immediate. "Bravo 7, disregard sensors EB-17. Malfunction confirmed. Return to your patrol route." The order was direct, but Vega could still see the cold, tall signature on his screen, moving further into the brush. Against protocol, but driven by a rookie's determination, he stopped his vehicle, grabbed his rifle and flashlight, and proceeded on foot. The buildup was a sensory nightmare. The fog muffled all sound. His own breath sounded loud in his ears. The thermal signature stayed just at the edge of his scope's range, leading him deeper. The ground underfoot changed from dirt to a strange, spongy moss that didn't belong in the South Texas scrub. The air grew colder, and the metallic taste of ozone coated his tongue. Then, he saw the first physical evidence: footprints. They were deep, single file, and enormous, each nearly 18 inches long. The stride was impossibly long, over 7 feet between impressions. And at the apex of each print, where the ball of the foot would be, were 2 deep, puncture-like holes. Vega's radio, which had been silent since the order to stand down, suddenly emitted a burst of harsh, digital static. A voice, synthesized and choppy, came through on a channel his radio wasn't programmed to receive. "Turn back. This is a protected corridor. Turn back." He looked at his GPS. It was dead. The compass on his watch spun freely. He was disoriented. A low, resonant hum began to vibrate through the ground, up through the soles of his boots. In the fog ahead, a shape solidified. It was the figure from the thermal, now barely visible in the cone of his flashlight. It was over 8 feet tall, its skin a mottled, bark-like gray, and it stood completely still, facing him. It had no discernible face, only a smooth, elongated head with deep indentations where eyes might be. It did not move. It simply observed. Terror, pure and operational, seized Agent Vega. He raised his rifle, but every instinct screamed that it was useless. He began to back away, slowly at first, then faster. The figure did not pursue. It tilted its head, a motion that was inhumanly smooth, and then turned and vanished into the fog as silently as it had appeared. Vega ran, stumbling through the unfamiliar moss, until he burst back onto the levee road. His vehicle was where he left it. He threw himself inside, locked the doors, and radioed in, his voice shaking. Bravo 7. I'm back at my vehicle. I made visual contact with an individual. I am returning to station. The aftermath was a clinical, professional debriefing that felt like gaslighting. His field report was taken. The sensor logs for ZB-17 were produced, showing a confirmed mechanical fault, and no subsequent alerts. His dash cam footage from the time he disembarked was reviewed. It showed only swirling fog in the interior of his vehicle after he returned, as the external camera had malfunctioned due to moisture. The sergeant who debriefed him was not from his usual chain of command. The man's badge said Special Operations. He listened to Vega's account without expression, then slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Agent Vega, you experienced a combination of fog-induced disorientation and a sensor ghost. It happens to the best of us on night shifts. Sign this, and this stays between us. Your career prospects are bright. Don't dim them with ghost stories. The verification of Vega's nightmare exists in two fragile pieces of evidence he kept to himself. First, the photos he took with his personal cell phone of the footprints. He'd snapped them before his GPS failed. The photos are blurry, but show the immense size and the strange dual punctures. A forensic podiatrist he contacted anonymously later told him the gait pattern was biomechanically impossible for a human of any size. The weight distribution is all wrong. Second, and more damning, is the audio. His phone, in his pocket, had recorded the entire encounter. The audio file contains his ragged breathing, the crunch of his steps, the digital voice saying "protected corridor," and that low, pervasive hum. And in the background, as the hum peaks, a subtle, multi-layered vocalization that sounds like clicking, grinding stone, and a high, fluting whistle. It has been analyzed by an audio engineer specializing in bioacoustics, who stated the vocal range spans frequencies both below and above human hearing, and the pattern has a complex, grammatical structure. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is about the protected corridor. After being transferred to a desk job, a promotion, he didn't ask for. Agent Vega used his system access to quietly pull old sector maps. On a 1998 geological survey map of the same area, declassified for internal use, he found a shaded zone labeled ZB-17 with the notation, "Geomagnetic anomaly, do not cite permanent structures." A handwritten note in the margin, initials illegible, read, "Migratory path. Non-interference protocol in effect." He wasn't chasing an illegal immigrant. He had stumbled into a protected corridor for something else entirely, something that has been known to, and deliberately hidden by, the very agency he works for. The sensors don't just track people, they also track what else uses the river as a landmark. And the orders to stand down aren't always about politics. Sometimes, they are about avoiding contact with the territory's other, for older inhabitants.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
The last broadcast of KTX 860 AM. Leo Gutierrez was a 58-year-old retired high school history teacher who took the overnight clerk position at the Siesta Inn on the outskirts of Laredo to make ends meet after his pension was cut. He was a creature of habit and quiet observation, finding a strange solace in the monotonous rhythm of the PM to AM shift. His world was the glow of the ancient computer monitor, the smell of industrial coffee, and the parade of weary truckers, clandestine couples, and lost souls that passed through the lobby's flickering fluorescent light. His normalcy was a ledger book, a copy of a historical nonfiction paperback, and the reliable, static-laden feed from the 4 black and white security cameras covering the parking lot. This predictable solitude was shattered during the early hours of March 3, 2021. The incident began, according to the handwritten logbook Leo maintained meticulously and later provided to investigators, at 3:17 a.m. A vehicle pulled into the far corner of the lot, beyond the reach of the strongest overhead lamp. Camera 4 showed it to be a late model, white Ford pickup, common as dirt in Texas. But it parked with its nose against the cinderblock wall bordering the desert, its headlights extinguishing a full minute before the driver's door opened. A figure emerged, moving with a stiff, deliberate gait toward the motel office. Leo noted the time, the vehicle description, and prepared his standard greeting. The man who entered was tall, dressed in clean but worn blue jeans and a denim jacket. His face was angular, pale under the lobby lights, and his eyes, Leo would later tell police, had a glassy, distant look, like a man listening to a radio. Only he could hear. The man, who gave his name as John Miller, paid for a single night in cash, requesting room 114, a ground floor unit at the very end of the building, directly in the blind spot between cameras 2 and 3. He asked for no amenities, offered no conversation, and took his key card with a nod that was more mechanical than polite. Leo's teacher's instinct noted the absence of luggage. He watched on camera 1 as the man walked to room 114, entered, and closed the door. The red, occupied light above the door frame illuminated. Then, nothing. For exactly 33 minutes. At 3:50 a.m., the door to room 114 opened. The man stepped out, but he was not alone. From the darkened room, a second figure followed, then a third, and a fourth. In total, according to Leo's count, verified against the choppy camera footage, 11 individuals filed out of the single room. They were all of similar height and build, all dressed in similarly nondescript dark clothing, and all moved with the same unnervingly synchronized, stiff gait. They walked in a single file line, not toward the white pickup, but directly into the scrub desert behind the motel, vanishing into the shadows beyond the camera's range. The white pickup remained unmoving against the wall. Leo's sense of professional detachment evaporated. He called the non-emergency line of the Laredo Police Department. The call log records a confused but insistent clerk reporting a possible smuggling situation with an impossible number of subjects exiting a single room. A patrol unit was dispatched, with an ETA of 15 minutes. During that wait, Leo focused on room 114's door on the monitor. At 4:02 a.m., the occupied light went out. The door did not open. The lights simply went dark, as if the room had been vacated at the main panel. Driven by a mix of duty and dread, Leo took the master key and left the desk, something strictly forbidden by motel policy. The hallway to room 114 was silent, the carpet muffling his steps. He could smell a faint, sharp odor, ozone and ammonia. The door was locked. Using the master key, he pushed it open. The room was pristine. The bed was made, the TV remote centered on the nightstand, the shower dry. The climate control was off. It was as if no one had ever entered, but the air was cold, at least 20 degrees colder than the hallway. And on the cheap wooden desk, centered perfectly, was a single object, a small, handmade clay figurine, crude and smooth, depicting a humanoid shape with an elongated head and oversized eyes. Next to it was the key card for the room. The police arrived. Their report, filed under a routine suspicious activity case number, confirms Leo's account of the call and the single vehicle. It notes the room was found in order, with no evidence of occupancy. The figurine was collected as possible lost property. The officers ran the plates on the white pickup. The registration came back to a John Miller of San Antonio. When contacted later that morning, the real John Miller, a retired plumber, was baffled. His truck had been parked in his locked garage all night. He had never been to Laredo. A subsequent forensic examination of the figurine, mentioned in an addendum to the report, found no fingerprints. The clay was of a type common to the region, but the shaping showed no tool marks, as if it had been formed by hand under tremendous, uniform pressure. The aftermath for Leo was a quiet, professional dismantling. The motel's owner, wary of police attention and potential immigration controversies, fired Leo for leaving the front desk unattended. The official narrative became one of an overworked, imaginative night clerk possibly falling asleep and misinterpreting a mundane event. The verification of Leo's nightmare, however, exists in two places. First, in the security hard drive. While the footage shows the 11 figures exiting, a frame-by-frame analysis conducted by a private investigator Leo hired reveals a chilling detail. As each figure passes from the pool of light into the darkness, they do not cast a shadow on the motel wall. Not one. Second, a month after the incident, a border patrol agent off duty and hunting javelina in the same stretch of scrubland behind the Siesta Inn reported finding a small neat pile of 11 sets of folded dark clothing placed carefully on a flat rock. Underneath each stack was a small, damp circle of the same odorless, clay-like soil. The chilling, unresolved detail that haunts the case is not from that night, but from a follow-up. Leo conducted himself. Desperate for answers, he visited the county records office. He discovered that the land the Siesta Inn was built on was part of a 19th century land grant originally called El Paso de los Silenciosos, the Pass of the Silent Ones. Local folklore buried in a historical society journal spoke of clay men that would sometimes be seen crossing the desert in single file mimicking human form, but never speaking, claiming no identity, moving with a purpose known only to the earth itself. Leo Gutierrez, the history teacher, had not witnessed a smuggling operation. He had, according to the oldest stories of that patch of dirt, checked in a traveler who was not a man at all, and who had brought his own congregation with him, folded away in a form the dimensions of a motel room could somehow contain.
Unit 7, requesting backup. I see lights.
What binds these 11 accounts together is not merely their geography, nor the fact they occurred within the contested, open spaces of the Texas borderlands. The connection is deeper, woven into the very fabric of the evidence. In each case, a layer of reality was peeled back, revealing a truth so unsettling that the official record was forced to contort itself to contain it. Malfunctioning equipment, misidentified signals, coincidental natural disasters, overactive imaginations. These are the tools used to plaster over the cracks in our understanding. But the verification persists. It is in the sterile soil of El Silencio and the mathematically perfect radio signal from the Dooley Ranch. It is in the declassified map noting a migratory path and the impossible blood ledger from Soledad Canyon. It is in the dash cam distortion, the corrupted water sample, and the 11 sets of empty clothing folded neatly in the desert. These are not ghosts. These are data points. They indicate patterns of occupation, of transit, of harvest, and of observation that operate on a scale and with a purpose we are only beginning to dimly perceive. The border is not just a line between nations. The evidence suggests it is a scene between states of being, a place where the ancient geology, the clandestine needs of unseen organizations, and the agendas of things that are categorically other, intersect. The stories of Deputy Marsh, Dr. Sharma, Captain Flores, and the others are not isolated nightmares. They are eyewitness reports from the edge of a silent, ongoing engagement. An engagement where humanity is often merely a bystander, a resource, or an obstacle to be managed with whispers, forged documents, and cold, bureaucratic silence. This is the court truth-verified nightmare exists to document. The world is stranger, and far more dangerous, than we are permitted to believe in our daily lives. But ignorance is not safety. It is vulnerability. Therefore, we leave you with these directives, born from the evidence we have presented. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The rancher, the scientist, the priest, the agent each felt the dissonance before they saw the proof. Your primal awareness is the oldest verification system you possess. Do not let official explanations gaslight you into dismissing it. Second, subscribe to Verified Nightmare. In a world where these stories are real, staying informed is not a pastime. It is a form of vigilance. Our channel is dedicated to stripping away the fiction and presenting the documented, corroborated facts of the unexplained. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Your next glimpse behind the curtain awaits. Third, like this video. Engagement is the currency of visibility in the digital age. By liking this video, you help the algorithm share these truths with other truth seekers, other individuals who sense the cracks in the world and need to know they are not alone in seeing them. Finally, comment below. Share your own accounts, your own local stories of the inexplicable. We monitor every comment. Every account is a potential lead, a new data point in the vast, hidden map we are attempting to chart. You are our eyes and ears. The verification process begins with you. The night is vast, and the borderlands, both geographical and existential, are wide. But we do not have to walk them in the dark. This has been Verified Nightmare. Remember, the most dangerous monsters are often the ones who look just like us, or who do not look like anything we recognize at all. Stay safe.